if you guys have ever seen tape of the old man, they called him the Happy Warrior. He was a great speaker. He was probably one of the top 3 or 4 in the last half of the 20th century. And so I thought, okay, so Skip's had this job forever. His dad was really good with the media and good with words. I'm going to be his communications director. It's an easy job for me. First day, we have a press conference, and we do it on consumer phone fraud. We have this cute little elderly couple up there who've been ripped off, you know, and they're talking, and Skip's talking about how not to get ripped off by consumer phone fraud. We call it shooting fish in a barrel. Should be an easy story, right? At the end of the press conference for that particular issue, Skip starts taking questions, and somebody asks him about the antitrust gas price fixing going on up in Duluth, and somebody else asks him about this investigation going on over there. The Attorney General is the lawyer for the state, right? So they have 250 attorneys working for them in all these different parts of the state doing all sorts of different things. Bill Clinton, that was his career. He was Attorney General when he was 28. He said it was the best job in the world because, you know, you'd ride in on the white horse and you'd save the day, and if it went wrong, you blamed it on the Constitution. So it's a good job, but it's a bunch of different things. So Skip starts taking questions on all those different things. The next day in the newspaper, guess what the stories were about? You think it was about the consumer phone fraud, or do you think it was about the questions he was answering about all the other cases, right? And he's pissed off, and he doesn't get it. And I said, seriously, you don't get this? You've been doing this for 15 years, and you don't get what just happened with the media and why you lost the message? And he really did. So it taught me very, very quickly that I need to kind of back up with everybody. And so I don't mean any disrespect. I don't mean to sound like this is patronizing. But I always kind of start back from how does the media work? Because I assume people get it, because it seems kind of basic, and there are certain things that obviously are innate. But we do have to kind of back up and say, what makes them tick? Why are they who they are? Why is their hair on fire when they enter our lives? What's going on with that whole media beast? And then we'll get into kind of, okay, now that we have that broad stroke understanding of what they're after and how they're operating, how do we intersect with that? How do we make it work for us instead of against us, and still drive our message and not get off topic like Skip was getting? Start answering questions that are the agenda of the media as opposed to what's our agenda. What do we want to talk about? Okay, does that make sense so far? So that's where we start, which is media. What is the #1 driver of the media? What is the most important thing in a reporter's life?
Public perception. What's the public interest? Right.
It's not the most important.
The story? No.
The story is not the most important. For a reporter, the deadline is the most important thing. This is when they wake up in the morning and their feet hit the floor. That's what they're thinking. What's my deadline? The news business has really increased exponentially. There's more news, and there are less bodies covering news. Yeah. Some of that is because of technology, but some of it is just because costs, cuts, those kinds of things. So there are fewer reporters with even more news holes to fill, more deadlines, more pressure on those men and women that you're going to deal with. Okay, cool. What does that mean? Well, when I got out into the real world, I started realizing that in the real world, you can call up somebody, email them, text them, and just say, hey, that deadline that was at 5 o'clock today, is it cool if I get it to you the first thing tomorrow morning? And 99 times out of 100, people go, yeah, cool. In the reporting world, you can't do that. You can't go to your producer and say, hey, that 5 o'clock story, I'm going to just hang on to that till 9 o'clock tomorrow. Because then you got nothing to fill that news hole with, right? Commercials smack into each other. They're big white spaces in the newspaper. They got to hit their deadline. They got to hit the deadline. It is a gun to their head. Okay. So what do I do with that information? When a reporter enters your life, what is the first question you ask them?
What's your deadline?
What's your deadline? Okay. And notice what I said there. You ask them. Okay. We all think that this whole reporting thing is passive. That we are sitting there at their mercy, waiting. Okay. Maybe Wonder Woman fending off the bullets even. Okay. It is not. This is an aggressive, and I mean that in a friendly way, friendly, aggressive interchange. You get to ask questions too. Okay? Reporter enters your life. You started off by saying, what's your deadline? Why? Because that's the most important thing in their life. Okay? So right away, they go, this person kind of gets it a little bit. they're coming at me in a way, and I'll answer that question all day long, I'll tell you. 9 times out of 10, my deadline is now. My deadline is 5 minutes ago, okay? But the other part that I want you to do with that answer, after you ask 2 more questions, and I'll get to those other 2 questions in a second, there's 3 questions you're gonna ask, okay? But after that first question in the deadline, and even if it's now, you're gonna buy yourself a little bit of time, okay? This is like, what do you mean, counterintuitive, don't I want press? They're there, ready to rock and roll. I'm talking about if somebody shows up in your life and you didn't expect them to be there, right? You answer the phone, it's a reporter on the other end wanting to quote, wanting to go, right? First question, what's your deadline? Second question, what do you think would be? What's a valuable question?
What do you need?
Yeah, give me a general sense of what you're after, what you need, okay? Just a general sense, okay? Some sort of question along those lines. Give me a general idea. Don't say, what's your slant? What's your bent? Okay?
So what's your angle is not your question.
Not your question.
What are you
right?
looking for?
What are you looking for? Give me a general sense of what you're looking for, okay? Fair question, they'll answer that. Third question, have you talked to anybody else yet? Why do I want to know that? Why do I care who reporters talk to?
Now, because you want to know if you have to counter somebody else's message, or if you're adding to somebody's message.
Exactly.
So do you ask, have you spoken to any of my opponents, or do you just ask who you've spoken to?
I just ask if you talk to anybody else. Make
Okay.
it sound as innocuous as you can.
Okay.
Most reporters will answer that question as well. Some will not. Some will say, well, I don't want to tell you. It's kind of a rare beast, because most of them, those 3 basic questions, most reporters will give you the information. Right now, you have a pretty good sense, if they've answered those 3 questions, of where they're coming from, who else they've talked to, which is pretty important, and whether I've got to counter a message or I'm the first one in, right? Okay? That's all good, right? You guys have got offices in different places, right? Sometimes they may have talked to Eugene, and they may have something going on down there that Portland's not aware of, all those kinds of things. It allows you to kind of get collected and on the same page. And then the last thing is, okay, I'm going to get back to you in 20 minutes or less. 20 minutes or less. Even if their deadline is now, even if their deadline is 5 minutes ago, that is reasonable, right? Nobody will say, well, screw you. 20 minutes or less. I'll get right back to you. I want you to buy that 20 minutes.
Always do that.
Always do. I don't ever want you firing straight out.
Okay.
The reporter. Why? Why?
Because then you get time to think through your thoughts.
Exactly.
Censor yourself.
Collect yourself, stay on message, right? Figure out what this is, because this is what this process is, folks. If you're going to get back in the media in the right way, you've got to get a message that you can drive and that resonates and connects with an audience, right? Not the reporter. Here's another thought. The reporter is not your audience. He or she's the filter to your audience. They're necessary all day long. We need that filter. We need that pipe that's on the other end of that filter. But they're not our audience, okay? So you're going to accommodate them with the deadline. It's where they live. You're honoring that. You're respecting that. You're going to get back to them in 20 minutes or less. Now, I'm talking about even if they walk up to you on the street, okay, and you didn't know they were coming, you can buy yourself 20 minutes. Cool. What's your deadline? Hey, I want to talk to you right now. I got the microphone. I've got it in your face. Oh, that's cool. What's your deadline? Okay. Give me a sense of what you're after. Great. Have you talked to anybody else? Well, I've talked to so-and-so and so-and-so. So can we go? You know what? Let me just go do this over here, and I'll come right back to you. I'll be back in 20 minutes or less. Go ahead.
Often, though, when that happens, they'll just go up to the next guy, if it's a march or something.
Yeah, but if you guys are all on script and the same page, and you've designated who your spokespeople are,
if we're in a big march,
right,
they'll just go to the person next to you.
Right.
And they won't be on script or a spokesperson, they'll just be some person marching. And they will give their opinion because they haven't had this training. So.
this is true.
Yeah.
This is true. Go
Real
ahead.
Well, we
quickly,
need to.
this is where the organizers in you come out, and that is you need to communicate to your members that if a member of the press, wants to talk to any of you, is like, you guys have a designated spokesperson, and it's like, call so-and-so, and let them know. This is the age of the cell phone, text messaging, all of that. Just keep it, that's where the organizers and you have to come out, so that it's just like, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so. And and tell folks, not to be afraid to do it.
Plus, and we'll get to this, but if you've got the right kind of discipline with your message,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody in the organization, from top down, volunteers, et cetera, has received that text ahead of time, this is the one sentence that we want to drive today, right? The hope is, then they're all gonna, even if they fire out, that they'll be on message. And yeah, I know, believe me, I know, the bigger the group, the harder the discipline. I get it, I get it. It's not a perfect world, but if we start trying to do this, right, we do start to at least get back to a place where we are trying to control what our message is and when we deliver it, okay, as opposed to just firing out, knee jerk, because we're not going to be as good. We're not going to be on message. Just like Skip at that press conference, he just starts answering questions instead of staying on topic. It's hard. And we'll talk about the pivot and how you avoid that and all those kinds of things. We'll get to that, okay? So this is the basic technique, though, where we start from. Buy yourself some time. Starts with a deadline. I'm going to get back to you in 20 minutes or less. This workbook that I'm going to give you is what we do with that 20 minutes, okay? It's the process that we go through to get to a place where we are ready, okay? A couple of more things, though, about the media before we leave this. If I walk into my newsroom in the morning and I say to the news director, the managing editor, hey, I got a really great story idea. I think I can get on the front page. I think I can get the lead story in the newscast, which is what I'm supposed to be doing. The news director or the managing editor is going to say, okay, does it have 3 C's? 3 C's. You want to take a guess at what any of those C's would be as the leading ingredient to get on the front page to attract an audience? Now,
Controversy?
Controversy is one.
Children.
Sometimes. Children and pets are a good formula. But that's down in the kicker, okay? If I've got controversy in children and pets, then I'm all the way there. What's another C? Another C that I need to get people to pay attention.
A hook headline?
But a C, I'm going for C.
Crime.
Crime is sort of it.
Conspiracy.
Conspiracy. I want conflict,
Conflict.
okay? I want controversy and I want conflict. This is why they started covering you guys, because of the conflict, okay?
Cops beating on.
It became this,
Yeah,
right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is why they showed up in the first place.
we want to back up the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, really, here's where you want to go. The third C. This is what where you really want to live. It's compelling. Okay? If I've got a compelling story that connects to an audience, I win as a reporter, as a journalist. I can have conflict, and it can be compelling. I don't have to have controversy for it to work. If I got controversy, and I got conflict, and it's compelling, home run. Okay, home run. So we do not want to be the object of that controversy, though, right? We want to be about exposing the controversy. We might want to be creating it in a more civil way, but we don't want to become the focus, because reporters will live on controversy all day long. Think about politics. The reason they show up to cover politics is because there's conflict, one side versus the other, sometimes 3. Okay, that's kind of cool. But then think about when the politician ends up caught in controversy, paying a prostitute, whatever's going on, right? And then how much that story ratchets up and drowns out everything else. Now, I have politicians say to me all the time, they only cover the horse race. They only cover the poll numbers. They only cover, who's ahead and who's behind. They're not covering the issues. Why aren't they covering the issues? Press is lazy. They don't care. I said, no, it's because it's on you. You know why? Because you're not this. You're not compelling. When you're talking about the issues, you're not connecting to your audience. And the press is not going to do that for you. Okay? They'll do the obligatory, so-and-so is here on abortion, so-and-so is here on this. But until you figure out a way to make your stand on issues compelling, the press isn't going to come there. They'll hang out over here. Okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, I had this conversation about how we can use the media, and a lot of people, a lot of occupiers eventually even Washington, they said it would never happen that way. It seems like there could be a possibility that is true still somewhere.
What can never happen?
Or like good media, like
Oh.
like manipulating it in a good way.
Yeah, getting attention in a good way, yeah, yeah.
There
So-
is a way.
There is a way.
Yeah.
You gotta come up with a compelling message again,
Right.
okay? And you can live, conflict's cool. You are conflict,
I love that.
right? That's all good.
Every day.
You just don't wanna become the controversy, because that always drowns out the compelling message. Okay? What was the number one gripe about Occupy for the first 3 or 4 weeks from people that wanted to be with you?
Don't have a message.
Right. Right. About the time y'all got a message, this became
Which is why they wanted us to have the message.
exactly.
Yeah.
It became about the parks, about how you destroyed the parks, about how, you know, the vandalism, and that's what people ended up hearing.
Uh-huh.
And the compelling part of it is you want folks on your side and about what was really going on in this country and why this whole movement started in the first place, and it got drowned out.
Uh-huh.
Now, compelling's a harder sell,
Oh, yeah.
okay, than controversy. No question.
Aren't controversy and conflict the elements of compelling? Did you already say that? I mean,
Sometimes.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes. And we don't want to be the controversy,
mhm.
right? So here's another way to think about compelling. How do you connect to human beings? Give me that. Say it out loud.
In the heart.
In the heart, that's one way. One. The head, heart, head, and
Pocketbook.
wallet, exactly. You know, I used to point to my wallet and people thought I was going for something else. Now I just articulate. But heart, head, and wallet, right? That's how you connect, okay? When you are running your messages through the test, through the meat grinder, you better have messages that connect in one of those 3 ways. And not to your friends in the room. Now we're talking about to the folks out there. You're a bad focus group, you know? You want to talk to the people who are in the reasonable middle out there that you can still get. Okay, you don't need your friends. Yeah, you do. You need a base sometimes. But when I'm talking about messaging, you need to be thinking about the folks out there in the middle. And am I connecting through the heart, the head, or the wallet? Okay. When you finally got to a message on the 99%, what does that connect to? With the masses out there. Where you-
Most people,
Wallet,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
most
Pretty
people
much a
see it
wallet
as an
message.
economic.
Little bit of a heart, little bit of a head message, but pretty much a wallet message,
Oh, yeah.
right? With not a lot of emotional gut, heart going on with that. Okay, it'd be great if we could live in the heart. Go ahead.
Well, it seems like the heart and the head connected to the people, like immediately, the first responders, the small portion that actually went and started camping, but the 99% is definitely the wallet.
Yeah. So I go through Northeast Portland now, and I'll see yard signs that say we are the 99%, right? So some of that stuck, some of that resonates. Some of it was, you know, it became talk show fodder, it became late night humor. But, you know, it got through, 99%, right? It means different things to different people.
Which
Right.
brings up another C, cohesive.
Yes, exactly. Cohesive message, right? Okay, but that's kind of where you lived. That's where it was before. So how do we get back to this place where we are compelling? Okay? Conflict's good. That works for us. That'll get the media to pay attention. But now we've got to switch, throw the switch from controversy to compelling. Heart, head, and wallet. Those are the messages that we need to drive. And we need to think visually as well, okay? There's a lot of other things we can do in terms of timing and visuals that will help drive this, okay? We're not going to have all of those ideas in this room this morning, but at least we're going to start, hopefully, down that path that makes sense, that intersects with what the media is after. Because again, they need these 3 C's. But here's the thing. Somebody mentioned earlier, good story, good coverage, right? Okay. Well, you and the media want the same thing. You want a good story and they want a good story. Really. Really do. You're on the same side on that. The difference is you want to live there and they can live over here. Okay? You want the good, they just want the story. They'll go back to the controversy. They'll still label you and brand you. Right now, your brand is controversy. They'll still live with that. Okay? That's okay for them. That's not okay for you guys. You got to get it back over there, and you got to do it by being compelling. When a reporter shows up in your life, what are they after? Ultimately, beyond the story, what do they really need from you?
Information?
You know what? Not so much. You know what they really need from you?
Soundbite.
Yes. Soundbite. That's what they're really after. 10 seconds. They want a soundbite from you. Go ahead.
I don't know what soundbite is, so yeah.
So a soundbite is 10 seconds or less of a quote that is either on compelling, on controversy, or on conflict,
Gotcha.
And it's concise.
and is concise.
So 10
She wants a
seconds.
fourth seat. She's lobbying over there for more. Okay. It's 10 seconds or less. Why 10 seconds?
Because most people only pay attention to 10 seconds.
That's exactly right.
Put that out there.
You know, everybody thinks it's the media's fault that we live in a soundbite society. No, no, no. That's the way we respond as human beings. You know, we're driving down the road, right, and I'm on a 4-lane highway, right? Over in this traffic going the opposite direction, there's a wreck. Okay? There's no reason my traffic lane should be slowing down, but it is. Why?
Because everybody's looking over.
Everybody's rubbernecking. They can't help themselves. Human beings are paying attention to the carnage that's going on over there. What's going on? Can't help themselves. Okay? That's what the media gives you. Okay? Now it's gotten even worse now because of the profits that are behind the media centers and the drive on ratings. Used to be they kind of sit there and they kind of arbitrarily give you what they thought you needed, you know, rather than what you responded to. Now it's pure up. What gets the human eyeballs to pay attention? Because the newspapers are shrinking, they're going away. They need eyeballs. The media, there's more and more channels out there. There's more and more splintering going on in the audience. It's all shrinking for them. So they're going to go to the lowest common denominator, which is conflict and controversy. Okay? But compelling still sells newspapers and still gets people to turn on the TV. It really does. It's harder. But that's where we got to get to.
When it's well packaged, is it more desirable?
I wouldn't go that far,
Okay.
you know, because I'll throw up a sex scandal against a compelling story. You tell me, what are you talking about the next day?
Right.
You know, what are 99% of the people talking about the next day? Okay,
Okay.
even I used to do these. I go in and speak to older gatherings like Lions Club or something. I'd say, okay, how many people in here watch PBS? And everybody raise their hand. I say, okay, keep your hand up. How many people watch it all the time, on a regular basis? Everybody's hand would stay up. I say, okay, great. You're all lying to me, because if you really did, guess what? Everybody would be showing. All the channels would have some variation of PBS programming because that's what people would be watching and that's what they respond to. But they don't. They don't. They watch the other crap. Okay? We're trying to cut through all that crap. We have got to be compelling. And we got to do it in a 10-second soundbite. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just twinkling and good.
Yeah. Yeah. Give me a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay? 10-second sound bites. That's really why they're after it. And they need visuals. Even if they're a newspaper, you still need visuals, okay? That was the other thing you had going, right? You had great visuals at first. You had nice visuals of marching, and you know, it was pretty fun occupation, friendly, things are good. Then they went the other way on you, okay? But they need those visuals, whether they're newspaper, radio, TV. They need visuals and they need soundbite. And those are the two things that you can control. You get to control what comes out of your mouth, 10-second sound bites, and you can control the visuals to a certain extent. Now, you lost control of the visuals because of kind of the nature of what happened. We don't need to dwell on that. But what we do need to focus on is how do we regain, right, control of visuals that align with a positive, compelling message. So how do we do that? Okay? That's what we need to, when you guys are sitting around brainstorming and talking about what's your next move and what makes the most sense, those are the two things. Does the visual align with what we want to be talking about right now? And do we have a compelling message? Something that connects to the heart, the head, or the wallet that is attached to that visual, that amplifies our message. Okay, is that making sense? Anybody think I'm full of shit?
No.
Okay, that's where we gotta go. And that's the discussion you all need to have internally when you're sitting around trying to talk about what's the next move here. How do we even dive on that particular grenade, or do we let that one go? Does it make sense, or does that align with the compelling message that we want to be driving? Okay? All right, and that's all around the media and who they are and what they're after. Last thing on this is Tom Brokaw used to say, you know, people would always say, "What's news, Tom?" And he kind of came up with this definition, and I ripped it off because I think it's great. If I said to you, "The cat sat on the mat," you say, "So what?" If I say to you, "The cat sat on the dog's mat," you're like, something might happen there. What happened next? At least I've got your attention long enough to get to the next bit, right? That's news. It's the cat on the dog's mat. You were that. You became something else. It went in the wrong direction for you guys. But you can get back to, you're still the cat on the dog's mat. Okay? You still have natural conflict built in here. It's a matter of what compelling messages do we have to drop. And you don't have to do them all at once. They don't have to be perfect, straight out of the chute. But they should be layered in, and you should be thinking about what's the message for this month, what's the message for this week, what are we all doing to drive towards those compelling messages. From our visuals, to things that we're doing out in public, or internal, or tweets, texts, everything on those compelling messages. Okay, and that's how, hopefully, you know, the rest of the folks start to get it. The volunteers that show up, you know, when we have that massive, and, you know, if we're to a day where we can go, where the reporter goes down the line and says, "What is this about?" And everybody says, you know, this is about the 99%. This is about economic justice. If that's a particular message that we're driving for that particular week, and that reporter got 4 or 5 people saying pretty much the same thing, man, we have arrived, right?
One day, yeah.
One day, you can dream. You can dream.
Easier said than done, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, part of the beauty of the, you know, of the nature of this thing in the first place was there was a lot of different people joining for a lot of different reasons, and that's cool. We can get to all of those things, but we got to do it in a systematic, layered-in process.
Yep.
Or it becomes chaos, and the media then are in control of what they're going to pick and choose from, right? And they'll always default to controversy, especially when you've got that much going on. Okay, but that's cool. There's hope for you guys. You're not dead at all, right? You're coming back. You've got the conflict working for you.
We're gonna rise like lions in the summer, man.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Heavy.
And let's
Yeah.
just make sure that you're driving messages when you're doing it. That people get it. That people aren't just going, "Oh, isn't that those homeless people that ruined the park?" Right?
Break windows and leave
Yeah,
syringes
right.
and, yeah.
That's the brand that we gotta change. Okay. But we can do it. Okay. Let's get into this, dive into this 10 steps here. I'm gonna pass those down. Catherine back there. I don't know if I have one for everybody. So this is, so the thing that I do, it's called the Ovation Group. So that's the curriculum that you see there in front of you, the workbook, and that's the label on front of it. Get past propaganda, go to page 4, step 1. Okay, so you bought yourself 20 minutes with this reporter, right? By being smart, ask them what their deadline is, get a general sense of what they're after, who else they've talked to. Okay. Now what do I do in that 20 minutes? This is the 10-step process, and I'll say this to you guys. First couple of times you do 10 steps, it's going to take you a little bit more than 20 minutes. But if you do this, it's going to be like any training program. If we all wake up as a group and say, "Hey, let's run the Hood to Coast." Okay, we can go on the internet. There's like 1,000 different training programs, right? Seriously, that you could follow to run a road race. You wake up in the morning and say, "Hey, I wish I was better with a reporter." There's 0 training programs. Okay. So this is your training program. It's going to be like anything. You like to do curls, you like to do crunches, you'll modify it to fit you. Some of the steps will be done by the organization, you know, because a lot of what this is about is getting your message together and getting it ready. And as you guys get better as a group at working together and get more on point, some of these steps will be even faster for you. You're literally just going to be checking in with your media person and saying, okay, what's the message we're driving this week, right? He's feeding it to you, you're ready to go. Okay, it's that fast. But this is what you do in 20 minutes. Now that's in step 4 and 5, and we'll get to those, okay? But step 1 in this process is literally, am I the right person? Looking in a mirror. Just because a reporter stuck a microphone in your face doesn't necessarily mean you are the right person at that particular moment, okay? So, step 1, is it me? Can I do this? Does it make sense? And here's what it comes down to. If you have passion about the particular issue that the reporter's asked you about, and you have knowledge, know what you're talking about. But if you have passion around that, and you do know what you're talking about, then yeah, you're ready. You're going to be that person. But check yourself, okay? Sometimes a reporter will call in, and just because you know you happen to be the person that picked up the phone or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean you're it. Okay? Sometimes you know, you may want you got different people from all walks of life in this organization, right? Sometimes you may decide, okay, we need somebody that looks like the general public on this particular one. No, we want somebody younger because it's to a younger demo. It's Willamette Week, and they want to talk to us, or the Eugene. What's the weekly?
Eugene Weekly.
Eugene Weekly.
Or the Mercury.
The Mercury. You know, so it's a younger demographic, a little bit different. Okay, we want to give them so and so and so and so. Okay, and this is where your media people will help you figure that out. And again, that's based on the audience that those publications are appealing to. Okay. So step 1, look in the mirror, figure out if it's you, if it should be somebody else. Again, it comes down to passion and knowledge. If I know what I'm talking about, and if I really have passion about what I'm talking about, great, I'm ready to get to step 2. Step 2, turn the page, is, and I always tell people, if you don't want to practice all 10 steps, just practice step 2. Next time you got to talk to a reporter, next time you have to give a speech, next time somebody says, can you talk to me for 5 minutes on X? Before you start, after you figured out that you are the right person to do that, 1-sentence goal. Okay? Type it at the top of the computer screen, write it on a piece of paper. What is my goal? Okay? My goal for this morning was to help you guys figure out how to get back in the media game and how to practice and prepare on your own or as a group, but using this technique. Okay, that was my goal. You can check me at the end and let me know how I did on that. Okay? But it starts from there. So what is your goal for this particular media opportunity? It will change from time to time. But I would suggest to you guys, you have an overarching goal right now that I think we could all get to an agreement on. What is that? I mean, why am I standing here? Why are you all interested in hearing what I have to say?
You want to learn how to get the message out.
Yeah.
I want to talk to media.
Yeah.
We want more people to join.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to get the media engaged again, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to drive your message so that you can increase your numbers, right? That just picks up everybody. Okay, and that's, go ahead.
Based on your experience, do you find that goals that are framed in the positive versus goals that are framed in the negative are more effective?
Well said. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
In your experience, like talking about a cause, a message about a real thing to do, like we're trying to do, is it, in your experience, is that always easy? It's not. It doesn't seem like.
No, you gotta bring it down.
Yeah, it seems like a very hard thing to drive through the media, let the public know this is what we're trying to talk about. It's about a cause. It's about a purpose. You know?
Yeah. Which is why you got to make it concrete. You
Yeah.
got to get it to their heart, the head, the wallet.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's the challenge for your organization is, you know, we've got this kind of big esoteric cause.
Yeah.
How do we chip off the pieces and make it concrete? And how do we resonate and connect?
So people can see the bigger vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's, frankly, guys, I mean, you know, you can probably figure out, you know, I tend to hang out on the Democrat side of the aisle. It's the challenge that Democrats always have because they have a pretty big, diffuse rainbow intent. And their message is never as simple as the right-wing message,
Yeah.
right? They're pretty blunt. They're pretty straightforward. You know, guns, God, gays, They don't like them. Well, they like one of them.
Yeah.
They like two of them.
Right.
Sort of.
yeah.
Going back to
Well,
what
we
she
could-
They
said though,
secretly like three
I was
of
gonna
them.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, the sheriff down in Arizona, we talked about that. Go ahead.
that's all negative though, and that works better.
Yes, a negative message is easier
Yeah.
and it's more streamlined. Absolutely. Doesn't make it right.
Oh,
But it works better not because it's negative, but because it's focused.
It's focused. I would argue that, you know, you can do positive focused messages and still carry the day. I mean, you know, look at Obama.
I was gonna say hope.
Yeah.
like, it seems like the positive frame is like the compelling one, and then the negatively framed one is the
Controversial.
controversial
Yeah.
one, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What, you know, look at the coverage on Santorum right now and where he's at on the social issues. And, you know, this guy, he's been saying the same thing socially for a decade now, but because he suddenly got the lead, everybody's re-examining where he's at. And he's just kind of continuing to piss off women and gays left and right. That's not new. It's just there's more focus on it.
Yeah.
His messaging is still the same as it was back in 2003 when Saturday Night Live was making fun of him. Go ahead.
I have a quick question. Do you think that, just using Santorum as an example, that the fact that he has been consistent, utterly consistent,
Yeah.
it's helped kind of propel him, whereas when you look at some of the other candidates on the Republican side, Newt, Romney, et cetera, you know, much more nebulous, and people can't get their emotional hook
Yeah.
into what's-
Especially in Romney's case. Yeah, especially in Romney's case. But, you know, also let's remember that, you know, we're back to this, you know, what's going on right now is playing out in a very small minority, even in the Republican Party. I mean, those are the folks who are voting in these efforts, and so you really have the extreme right that they're appealing to and that the game is being played in. So it's not the general public that we care about, so I don't want to get too wrapped up on that side.
But that's also helping shift the conversation because they're getting so much attention that people are starting to think about these extreme minority things that the general public,
And
so-
Obama is going every day,
Yeah.
right, that this happens. I mean, look at, you know, we've gone from 6 months ago, people saying, oh, he's got to go get Hillary as his VP to even have a freaking chance, to just keep your mouth shut and let them implode, and you walk in. We all know, in politics, it's about 6 months memory, so whatever's happening now doesn't even matter in November, right? And you guys have seen that already, but that's the good news for you guys. Let's get back to us, which is memories are pretty short out there, okay? And so you do have some fresh cycles here to go. It's not going to be easy at first, because at first you're going to be labeled as that group that had the homeless people camping out and ruining our parks and breaking windows, okay? That's the reality of where this dialogue and this conversation left off with the media and with the general public. Go ahead.
That's why we need to come in as compelling, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so that's step one, looking in the mirror. Am I the right person? Step two, one sentence goal. We know what our overarching goal is, right? Then we're gonna break it down for each of the opportunities. You know, today I'm trying to get, and the goal should always be, what are you trying to do to the audience? Why do you care? Sorry, I thought I had that. Why do you guys care enough to engage the audience, and what are you trying to get them to do? You know, overall, you're trying to get your numbers to increase, right? But any kind of opportunity that you have with an audience should be about, where am I trying to move them? I want their support. I'll go back to politicians for a second. If they're standing in front of you, most of the time they want your vote or they want your check. And I can't tell you the number of politicians, and you've seen it too, Catherine, the ones you've worked with too, that forget to ask for the vote or the check because they're not goal-oriented. They're sitting there just blah, 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 and they're done. The goal should have been vote. When the last governor's debate between Kitzhaber and Dudley, you guys remember this, right? Dudley, big, tall, blazer, ex-blazer. And he was giving Kitzhaber a pretty good run for the money. They only had one really televised debate. At the end of it, Kitzhaber, who's been around for freaking ever, but still says, you know, I'm John Kitzhaber, and I really would appreciate your vote. Looks the camera in the eye and says that. Dudley never said it. Never said it. I can't tell you the number of people I heard that from that made a difference.
Why does that make a difference, since we know that
Because-
intuitively?
Yeah, because it's still about the ask, you know? If you're goal-oriented in your communications, it's still about the ask at the end. I mean, it's a difference between if you're trying to raise money and you never get to $1, you know, you never get to a direct ask, you just kind of infer it. It's pretty easy to blow you off, right? If you say to me, and you know, so that's why I'm hoping that you'll consider giving us $100 because we're trying to do X, Y, and Z. Great, I have a number, I get what your communication is, it's clear, go ahead.
Then we'd say things like, you know, come join us on this day, or come sign this petition,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, a call to action, specific call to action, based on your goal. You know, you guys are trying to get more people to join your ranks and more people to come in here, and you need to say that, right? You need to be specific about that. Okay, those are the first 2 steps. Turn the page, step 3. Who's my audience and where are they at on this? Okay, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So I used to train with a woman named Jeanette Paya Espinoza. She was 4'11" and she was Asian. And she was married to a director of Latin Studies over here at PSU. And she was training sexual harassment training for the Oregon State Police. This before I started working with her. I'm like, wow, that must have been a trip for you, right? Alpha male, she's Asian, 4'11", okay? Think about what some of the stereotypes are with that. Think about the topic that she's got to present, okay? If she doesn't go in knowing where her audience is at with those stereotypes of her and of the topic, and if she isn't ready to deal with that, she's never going to get to the stuff that she needs to get to, right? So I said, how'd you break down those barriers? What'd you do? She said, well, you know, I'd go in, I'd be sitting on my projector, getting ready to do the presentation, and the room starts filling up, and it's very alpha male. These are all state cops, right? You guys probably have met a few of those along the way. Very alpha male. And she said, you know, I just listen for the loudest voice in the room, and I just engage him. And we just start having a conversation. And right away, the room is just kind of quiets down and watches this kind of conversation take place. And just think about the signals that are getting sent there before she ever even starts, right? And she's just having dialogue. She's not busting balls or anything. She's just having a dialogue with this guy. But right away, the stereotypes of her that you may have had start to melt away, okay? So she's got that knocked down before she ever starts. And then she starts on her topic, and she had like the story of a female officer harassing a male officer in Maine or something like that. Ooh, didn't see that coming, right? Got their attention. Okay, now boneheads, here's the 17 things you need to stop doing. Or you're going to end up with a sexual harassment suit, okay? But if she doesn't break down those barriers first, right? If she doesn't know where her audience is at, okay, so where is your audience at on Occupy?
We're a bunch of homeless bums breaking stuff.
Yeah, we've talked about it already, right? They're pretty cynical, right? And if they were paying attention, they're pretty negative right now on your image, okay? So you got to know that going in. We'd be stupid to be oblivious to that. How do we deal with that? How do we get over that?
We show them that we aren't some.
Okay.
Got to own it. So, you know, it would be silly to start the conversations right now without some sort of, yeah, we know we had issues, we know we had problems, you know, but here's how we're going to try and fix those. There's one rule in all of this that I always tell people, and that is before you get, and it's what Jeanette was trying to do with some of her approach to it, but empathy before explanation. So, and empathy can take on a bunch of different ways. Eventually, we want to get away from the acknowledgement. You know, we don't have to every time out, say, hey, sorry for the parks. You know, that gets a little old. So we want to deal with that on the front end, but we want to move to a different place, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay, go ahead.
The first thing reminded me that a lot of what's in the media is completely inaccurate. Is it worth it to counter what's there?
Most of the time, no, because you're fighting an uphill battle. You know, it's easier just to do this acknowledge empathy and move, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
A little bit of an acceptance, and then get to the higher ground. Okay, but if we kind of remember that empathy before, because if you start trying to explain, and that's a natural tendency as human beings. You know, I mean, from the time we were 8 years old on, right? And mom came in and said, what the hell? And you start to try and explain, right? Instead of, think about if a kid could like go, oh, mom's pissed off. Hey, mom, I'm sorry that you're, you know, upset. Sometimes you don't even own it. I'll give you an example, another deal. I was working with Adidas, okay? And they have their product design people who are in their late 20s and early 30s. And they have like $50 million product lines for basketball and tennis and women's sports and kids sports and all this stuff, right? And they're all living here in Portland. They're all mostly hanging out in Northeast over by Adidas. Young, hip, putting zippers in places you never thought about, and different colors and all that stuff. It's a cool job. They were presenting every quarter to their sales force. The salespeople come from big urban centers, mostly suburbs of the big urban centers around the country and around the globe. And they're in their 40s and 50s and they're driven by price. They don't care where the zipper is, they don't care what the color is, they just want to sell. So there's a bit of a cultural disconnect there. You can see that, right? We help them bridge it out. People pay me to do this, believe it or not, guys. Okay, it seems pretty obvious. But once we really got into it, what was going on, there was no trust in the room, and it didn't have anything to do with either side, but the operations people had failed to ship into the retailers on time for 3 straight quarters. So no matter what kind of energy these two groups built up, it got smashed because the ops people were late. Okay, so what's my point of this story? Nobody in the room owned the problem, okay? Nobody owned it. Wasn't, you know, it was nobody's fault, but if they didn't figure out a way to deal with it, they weren't going to get to the place they needed to get to. So we said, get the VP of Operations to come down to Tampa, Florida for the big annual meeting. That's your keynote speaker. You know, it's boring, but it is that's the first thing that everybody has to hear. And that person needs to own it, acknowledge it, and say, here's how we're going to fix it. And then you can get to a place, right, of energy. So this is what I'm saying to your question about, you know, do we correct the misinformation? Do we do it? No. No, because that's just wasting time, going in the wrong direction, feeding into the wrong story. We want to try and get from that as quickly as we can, but we have to have some sort of acknowledgement of those perceptions of where the audience is at. So literally, you know, I know when you hear Occupy Portland right now, you're thinking of homeless people, Parks Rec, needles, broken windows. You know, let me tell you why it's not that any longer. Okay, I'm not going to get into the explanation. Does that make sense? Okay. Quick and painless, hopefully. A little painful, but as little pain as possible.
There's a lot of questions, you know, we talk to them either way, but we still can always say.
The news part of this, guys, is that you are trying to transform and trying to move. That is a story in and of itself. You know, that's a hook.
Yeah.
Get in. Go ahead.
It seems like a challenge with this issue is that as much as we want to say that's not us, it really is us, because the city still has all those people that were just happened to be camping at the camps now spread out through the city.
Right.
And those people are still a part of this movement just as any of us are.
Right.
So going to the media and saying that's not us doesn't really work. Perhaps the people in this office and perhaps the people that come out to the marches aren't shooting up, you know, and causing havoc in the streets as much. But to like say that those people that were causing that problem like are no way like part of the 99 or Occupy is just wrong, it seems. So it seems like a really big challenge to like come up with a narrative that's going to tell people that like we're not a bunch of criminals, but at the same time not denounce the people that were at camp honestly trying to like you know, be a part of the protest.
Right. Well, there's a nice little phrase that gets you out of that, I think.
Yay!
We learn from our mistakes. Okay? You're owning it. You know, you're not disowning the individuals. And you're saying, look, we learn from the mistakes that we made. Here's what's different now. I know, you're hesitating. Go ahead, and then we'll go here. What do you think?
Oh, I was gonna bring back like what she's, like Ilona's talking about and what Jane is talking about, how to like neither do either or. Like the parks are like, you know, like we mess up the parks. There's a whole bunch of homeless people. There is an information out there that a lot of the public is looking into about this guy who used to work for the Park and Recreation. He actually said the estimated numbers, you know, the money, how much it would cost to fix the parks in Cologne. Would it be okay to acknowledge that as well as acknowledging the things we did make mistakes about?
I don't think you have the credibility to do that, and if you start to debate that, it sounds like you're trying to justify what happened.
It's gonna open something else up,
Yeah.
yeah. People can look into it.
What we're trying to do is get to a place where you tell your audience, yeah, you know, we acknowledge where you're at right now.
Right.
You know? So by this, you're saying, look, we made mistakes. We learned from them, and here's what's different.
Acknowledging, okay.
Or here's where we want to go, even if it's not different. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're stuck with this image of like the parks being this disaster, but a lot of the reality of the situation was like the homeless people that are now scattered throughout Portland. We're getting fed every day. We're getting shelter. We're getting medical care, and that message never came out. And so to say like we made a mistake is like, no, we really
learned from our mistakes.
like what was the mistake? I don't know, you know.
Yeah, I think we managed to kind of highlight the failings of society
But
in a very messy
the
way.
the people we're communicating with feel we made a mistake, and that's how we connect with them, is by saying, okay, we hear you and we understand that and we've learned from it. I think, is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I guess a lot of
Because
people
not
feel that we
everyone
didn't.
will see it the way we see it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying is they don't see it the way we
Exactly.
see it,
Right.
and it's too late to like
That's the
show them
opportunity.
the way that it
And
should
that's
have
the way
been.
time goes.
We can't go
That's
back.
time to drive it right there.
But to say that like, yeah, I
That's
just,
coming off compelling.
You can't
what's
go
the
back.
mistake? I guess what is the mistake?
You
The
gotta
mistake
go
was
for
to
it.
let homeless people in the camps. Like,
No.
what was the mistake? The mistake was to
Do
screw our
you have to
message up?
articulate
Like,
the mistake, or do you just have to accept
a
that
mistake.
that there is a mass belief mistakes were made?
So the mistake, again, I'll go back to, you know, whether you own it or don't own it, whether you are a part of it or not, the mistake that the movement made was that the perceptions became negative. Even the folks who would have supported you normally were against you at the end of it. And that was because it became a bunch of homeless, drug-using, stinky people
Trust fund babies.
screwing up our parks, right? And just making a general nuisance.
And that's, I think, where a lot of the, I guess, conflict is, that some people, you know, if you play too much into the media, you're kind of selling out your, I guess, base principles to try to get that, you know, general public to like you a bit more, but then you're not keeping straight, you know. So I've had that argument a lot with a lot of people within
Yeah.
Occupy, you know, but, you know, perception is reality, but at the same time, you don't want to sell out your principles.
Well, it's a weird thing because, you know, you need the media to drive your message. You need the media to amplify your voice. And you need that third-party credibility, right? And yet, the story that they ended up with was controversy as opposed to the compelling messages. Part of it was your fault. I gotta say, I think that you were late to the party on the compelling message. And if the nature abhors a vacuum, especially in the media world, and if you don't give them a compelling message, they'll roll over to the other side.
And I don't know if you're going to cover it later, but kind of strategies for compelling messages or different angles would be good to cover.
We will. Go ahead.
Just forgive me, I don't know, what's your name?
Ilona.
Alona, I'm Catherine. One of the things, for example, just to kind of think about in terms of the messaging, if you will, is to say the reason, and again, hindsight is 20/20. You know, it's like, you know, mistakes makes. But perhaps if there had been a message of this is what happens because Wall Street got away with what they got away with. We're seeing an increase in unemployment, an increase in houselessness, and an increase, you know, in mental health issues. Where else are they supposed to go? It's like turn it back on Wall Street, what perpetuated the problem in the first place, you know, and that could be, and that's a way to put a positive spin on what happened without explaining, justifying, and still to make sure that those folks are still thought of as being part, as part of the movement and not, pushing them away, but rather it's like, this is what happens, these are the consequences when X happens.
Yeah, I mean, we were framing it as like economic refugees, like these people, like this is a refugee camp for economic refugees, like that's what it's turned into. And I feel like at a point we were able to the media never picked up that point.
Right.
And they'll never will, because.
But we did push on those very things,
Yeah.
and we had some pretty good people doing it. It's just that, like
Honestly,
controversy trumps that. So
Ju-
yeah, people, if you see a needle fine, you lose the message of
Right.
you're doing this.
So we're
for money.
talking about, how do we get to a place where we can start driving compelling messages again, right? And so it's based on what is our goal, right? We want to increase our numbers, right? We want people to resonate and feel like, yeah, we're speaking with them and to them. And that right now we've got to acknowledge the cynicism that they've got around Occupy. Okay, whether we owned it, whether we earned it, we earned part of it we didn't, part of it the media took from us. But let's move forward, let's not move back, okay? And some variation of we learn from our mistakes gets you to move forward, okay? And I appreciate you want to be true to your soul and not cop to somebody else's idiocy or other people's, misperceptions. But we got to go quick, okay? We need a quick, concise way to do that, especially in the media. And that's a quick and concise way to do it. So step 4, okay? This is where we start to get into message. What is 4 on what page number is that, guys? 10? 10? Okay. So now we got into message. Man, there are so many things we can say because you guys have got a big umbrella, big rainbow. A lot of different people hanging out with you and a lot of different people interested in different things. Justice means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So how do we do this? How do we start to get to a place where we can be disciplined and get to everybody's messages? Well, first place is you throw it all up on the board. I mean, you guys, I would advocate, you get all your people in, as many folks as possible. You have a big brainstorming session. You're throwing it all up there, right? Every possible thing that you could talk about that would be compelling. That's the test. All the different compelling points that you can make. That's cool. If you sustain a movement long enough, you can get to all of them. But on the front end, you got to get down to 3. Why 3?
Easy number to remember.
It's easier to remember, right? It's very interesting. The University of Pennsylvania did some studies on our brains. And if we have numbers in singles, numbers in doubles, or numbers in triples, we remember the triples better.
Than the singles and doubles?
Yeah, than even the singles and doubles. Our brains like 3s, okay? Also, remember what I'm doing here? I'm building towards a soundbite. Try and stick more than 3 things in a 10-second soundbite. I don't care how fast you talk. You can't get it all in. So we're going to 3, okay? As an organization, that's what you should be striving for. All the different things you could be talking about, all the different ways that you could connect to your audience out there, boil it down to the top 3. Now, the 3 can change as we go, right? But on the front end, what are the 3 most compelling things that we could talk about, okay? We'll get there. We're going to do this little brainstorming here. I think we got enough time that we can make that happen. But once we've narrowed it down to those 3 points, then you'll see step 5 is this core message concept, right? It is what does Occupy stand for? What's the core message? Starting out now, today, going forward. What's the 10-second soundbite?
Financial inequality?
We'll get there. We're going to brainstorm in a second.
All right.
But if you do this, and let's just talk about technique for a second. If you have these 3 things and you've developed the core message, then you get to have a soundbite for each of your key points, right? You got a little 10-second soundbite that is talking about this particular aspect. Another 10-second soundbite about that. You've got 3 soundbites. I got a core message. So now I got 4 different things that I can talk to with reporters that hopefully connect, that are compelling, right? and that's where I want to live and stay. And everything else is how do I get back to those points? When the reporter wants to say, well, let's talk about the parks, what do you want to say? Yeah, you know what? As we said in the beginning, we learn from our mistakes in that. Here's where we want to go today. Boom, boom, boom. That's what's called the pivot. We want to pivot back to our message over and over. Go ahead.
So that we learn from our mistakes, is that meant to just kind of like erase people's memories? Like, is that how it works?
No, you're just
It's like a
acknowledging.
Men in Black thing.
You're acknowledging where they're at.
It's like the Men in Black.
Yeah. See this and forget. No, you're acknowledging where they're at. You know, it's a very quick pivot of, you know what? Yeah, we get it. We get it.
So the pivot is not your message, it's how you transition from where your audience is at to your message.
Yes. Yes. It's not ignoring the question. Okay, it's not the Sunday morning talk show where, you know, they ask the senator about the price of tea in China and he talks about homosexual marriage in his response. It's not that. It's not ignoring the question. It is getting from the question back to what you want to talk about. That's what the pivot is. And it is the difference between literally, it's in conversation. If you ask me a question, a lot of times I'll repeat the question so that you know that I heard it, and then I'll really try and answer the question. That's how conversation works, right? This is the media game we're playing over here, guys. This is what we're here today to talk about, is how to talk to reporters. Reporters, you don't have a conversation. That's not what you're doing. They're not your audience. They're a filter. They're collecting sound bites. The people at home are never going to see their question. Unless they're interviewing you live, they never see the reporter's question. I can't tell you the number of people that say, I got quoted out of context. Duh. That's the way it works. You never see the question. It's just what you said. Okay, go home tonight, put a stopwatch on any quote in a newspaper. It'll be 10 seconds long or less. You won't see the question from the reporter. They'll just be dropping it into the story. Okay? So get past this thing of, oh my gosh, I have to literally answer their question. No, no, no. They're asking you broad stroke stuff. Okay? You got a message that you want to drive. You control what comes out of your mouth. You can pivot there all day long. Will the reporters get frustrated because you won't talk to them about the parks? Absolutely. Eventually they'll get tired of that. But for the first month or two that you're out there trying to get onto this new messaging, you're going to have to pivot from the parks. Trust me. Over and over.
Now, if they're asking questions about the parks and we're rejoindering with, we've got this march on Saturday, are we not addressing the question in that case, or are we just, because it sounds to me like that isn't valuing the pivot that you were giving to us a few minutes ago. Do we still need to pivot from the parks question to the march? So we need to do that. I hear you on that parks thing, and we hope in our march on Saturday that we will address those issues.
Yeah. Or, you know, we've already acknowledged that we made mistakes. Here's what's new and here's what's different.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And they either take it or they don't.
If your response is meaty enough on the issue you're pressing, they can't get your response to their question in the 10 seconds.
That's part of it. Yeah. I mean, I tell people all the time, it's okay to not, if they interviewed you and you don't make the cut, right? It's worse to be off message. It's worse if you were to try and be in an argument about how bad the parks really were damaged, because then that allows that story to fester. And now there's another 2 weeks before I get to finally get beyond that story, right? If I'm not feeding into the fire of controversy, then they don't, and nobody else is, then they don't have anything. Go ahead.
I think the biggest challenge for us is not going to be moving on from the parks thing, because we'll be really good at doing other controversies. I think it's going to be moving on from breaking windows, disrupting people in marches. I think that's going to be the main thing that people are going to associate us with from now on, because we do have a lot of those big actions coming up.
Right.
And like we've seen in the past, when we do have these big actions, it's not Occupy protests against bank unfairness. It's Occupy protesters pepper sprayed and arrested, blocking the street. And that's gonna, I see this at least for this year. I think that's gonna be we're gonna have a lot of these big high-profile actions that are gonna create these disruptions, and the media is gonna focus on the disruption more than the message.
Right.
So I think stepping away from the parks is not gonna be hard, because there are high-profile things that will anyways shift the perception. It's just about that the perception is gonna be shifted towards these things, not necessarily what you want.
So more just kind of thuggery and vandalism as opposed to.
Because that's what we're gonna be for a while.
I mean, because there's F29 coming up in a week and a half, which is shut down the Corporations Day. There's Chicago in May. That's going to be a really huge thing. There's all kinds of Democratic Republican conventions. There's the Republican debate here apparently in a month. So all that's going to be really high profile.
Right.
In the streets.
Right.
Yeah.
So, how do you drive a message, right? How do you get that message to cut through and not have it continue to reinforce this negative image of Occupy? Part of it is, go ahead, Jana.
And that, your message is going to be as good as your organizing skills. And to a significant degree, when you're all talking amongst yourself, is the message of, discipline. It's like, watch out for everybody, keep folks, it's gonna be hard to, to stay disciplined, and because there's so much passion, in terms of like where we're at, as a country and where we need to be. And you want that to be your focus. So as organizers, when you're talking amongst yourselves and, what expectations are, when you do an event, so that the issue doesn't become broken glass or a syringe, but rather, the 99%, your message is going to be as good as you're organizing for those events.
And I think we're pretty much on the same page about that. The problem is, we're a non-hierarchical organization. We don't have a cohesive group of organizers that say, it's not top-down.
Right.
It's very difficult to get everyone on the same page. And even if that happened, like we saw a few weeks ago with the broken windows, there's going to be some young person to do it anyways. It's not part of the movement, and they'll get tied to that.
Here's the thing, though. Other groups and organizations have been in that same spot. I will guarantee you, in the years I've been doing this, you will figure it out. I have every faith in you guys to do that. You'll do it. You'll figure it out.
I mean, the good news from a media standpoint is I got assigned to you because there was probably, there might be some broken glass or there might be some pepper spray. None of that happens. I still need a story because it was whatever day of the week it was, and, I blew up 2 crews. So now I need a story. So I will at least come away with the secondary story. And if your messaging is compelling and you're trying to make the story about turning the corner, then you'll get in there.
I guess what I'm saying is broken glass and pepper spray will most likely happen.
Yeah. Well,
But
If whether we want it or not.
That's gonna happen. Let it happen. It's gonna happen either way, right?
Hey, Alex, everyone,
What happens, happens.
this is gonna happen for a while, but if we get good at talking to people openly about things, we're gonna be around for a while. People are gonna have sympathy and really recognize what we're doing. They're gonna really empathize in the long run. Hey, if that happens, you know what? We got a lot of people on our side right now. That's our goal. Try to get more people to join. So we're gonna get better at talking to people.
Yeah.
We'll be around forever.
I think you can at least fight to a draw. If the pepper spray is happening, the broken glass is happening, but you still have got compelling message. The numbers are growing, things are happening.
Right.
There's still parts of that story that are newsworthy, right? And I'm still gonna probably lead with 6 arrests and broken glass, but as the coverage is going, because I'm gonna do a minute and a half on that. I got 15 seconds of pepper spray and cops, and then I've got other things, right? And I've got you, hopefully everybody in your organization on the same page with a compelling message that's connected. So yeah, it's not an easy uphill climb. And if all things equal, if it was controversy and compelling, controversy is going to lead. But that doesn't mean that you still can't get your compelling message.
I mean, I'm with you. I think it's the way to do it. I'm just laying out the practicality.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the reality check. I'm not saying you guys have got an easy slog. Go ahead.
I was just curious, can we create our compelling message with the forethought that these things may happen and kind of have our message target it ahead of time so that while they get the pepper spray story, they also get that other piece that goes with it that makes it more compelling. Like, I guess that's what I was thinking, was just aiming towards that possibility so that our three things already kind of touch the counter part to,
Yes.
yeah?
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, that it becomes part of the, look, you know, there's a lot of passion around these issues, you know, and there's some people that, you know, are choosing to act out that passion in a way that we don't condone, you know, as an organization, but we understand why they're, you know, the anger kind of thing.
Sorry, guys.
But here's why we marched today. Here was why we were here. Here's why the 1,000 other people that didn't break glass or break the law in any way, here's why they showed up, right? And I think that's the kind of thing, is it's the overwhelming number as your numbers grow, and it's those people who aren't doing anything other than showing up, marching in protest, obeying the law, practicing civil disobedience in the right way, or whatever phrase you want to use.
What about the pre-media part of it too? Because it seems to me like part of what's gone wrong for us in Eugene is that our message about what we were doing before it happened didn't hit correctly, so that they could take the ball and run with the other stuff, because there was no real knowledge of what we were there to, like, if they have that knowledge to begin with, then you have like this basis of why we were there.
Right.
Then we kind of embrace the idea that it's inclusive and honor diversity,
Instead
and
of,
so
hey,
we
there's
get
gonna
all
be
these
a bunch of bodies and some potential for somebody to go to jail. Yeah. Which, again, is probably why you're going to continue to get covered for the short term. But you can use that to your advantage, right? As long as we're pivoting to these compelling messages. And you can't control everybody. That's a given.
So you're saying the fact that we are still going to be hit with a negative message gives us the vehicle to deliver our positive message.
Yes. Well put.
Yeah.
Well put. Let's do this, okay? Let's spend a little bit of time on this. So, what there's a ton of things that we could say. What do you guys think is the right now, today, core message for Occupy?
Equality.
Equality?
Economic inequality, wouldn't it be?
Well, let's just we'll just take them. That pen blew up. Equality. That one's good.
Yeah.
Financial inequality is the goal.
Equality.
Yeah.
Economic. What do we want to call it? Justice.
What do we want?
Sure.
Economic equality. I see.
What else?
Social justice.
What else?
Campaign finance. Money in politics, that's better.
And these are, what are we writing these for?
Yeah, these are going far out there. This is part of the
These
vision.
are the core messages that we're trying to get.
Community empowerment to regain control of their lives together.
I was going to add to that, community investment, you know.
Hasn't been a message, but it should be.
Yeah.
Well,
Actually, it has been a message, you know, and not just like in the bigger social picture,
yeah.
but also it's like, look at the whole thing about move your money.
Yeah, bank transfer day was good.
You know, the whole discussion around a state bank here in Oregon, or, you know, why do our public dollars that are in Wall Street, we invest them locally?
Sustainability, that's what I like.
Self-determination.
Self-determination. What else?
networking with allies. Like, I guess it kind of plays in the empowerment kind of idea, but it's part of what brings me to Occupy is the idea that there's going to be a lot of like-minded people trying to create change, community building.
Writing power in the masses to create change. What else?
This might already be in one of them, but just the idea that we're all leaders, we're all empowered.
Leaderful.
Well, is this a message like that we're trying to get to everybody else, or like a message about ourselves?
Either one. I mean, right now we're just kind of all the different aspects of, you know, the 99%, the Occupy. What does it mean? What does it stand for?
Countering corrupt government policy. maybe?
Antonio, you had your hand up.
I hear a lot of people talking about sustainability for like 10 years now.
Mm.
Sustainability?
Yeah.
To add on to that, I think it's a lot of people that are looking for a paradigm shift,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah.
Change.
Kind of looking at all of the different things that you guys have put in there, things like, social justice, campaign finance reform, money in politics, community empowerment. It's almost like, the 99%, we play by the rules. You get up in the morning, you go to work, you get your kids off to school, those of us that, still fortunate to have a job. But it seems like in this day and age, it's more like people are struggling. You have more month left over at the end of the money as opposed to more money left over at the end of the month. And you're playing by the rules, and it's kind of...
Yeah, I totally see that, like, people are waking up that the corporations are not playing by the rules, the same rules that we are.
And they're the ones who dictate the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
They tell us to play by the rules, but they don't have to play by the rules that they set out.
Keeps everything sustainable.
Accountability.
Yeah. It seems like the strongest message that we're up again is that the economy has to grow, and that we have to be willing to do anything to keep that economy growing. And so we allow corporations to not play by the rules because it allows the economy to keep growing. So it seems like somehow creating a message that is able to balance that out and say the economy doesn't have to grow, but what we can do is create jobs and have a healthy, vibrant local economy that doesn't potentially, export as much to other countries or, but it takes care of us. Like we take care of ourselves. We take care of our own. I don't know how to craft that into an effective anti-growing economy message, but it seems like it's necessary.
It's about communities.
Yeah.
But also the rules we've been playing by are not the right rules. The rules that have been written by the people
Yeah.
kind of stay in power and favor themselves. So I think it's just a whole about rewriting, rethinking the way our society is working, and is it the way we want to have it? Yeah. And not necessarily on getting, me a job or you a job. It's more like, what are the jobs for? If it's just to get us some money so we can buy more shit, so we can live in a bigger house and still be unhappy.
Okay, let's do this. Let's do this. You got 3 votes, okay? Each one of you in the room have got 3 votes, okay? And I want you to vote for either equality, economic justice, social justice, campaign finance, community empowerment, community investment, self-determination, countering corrupt government power, sustainability, or changing the paradigm shift. You get 3 votes, okay? So,
Can we combine one of them?
you want to do that right now?
Can we combine self-determination and community empowerment? Because I feel like they really,
Sure.
they're 2 pieces of the same.
Okay. All right, equality. 2, 3. 3 votes there. Economic justice.
Oh, wait a minute.
1, 2,
Oh, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Wait, I'll do it.
5. Social justice. 1, 2, 3.
For the bleeding hearts.
Campaign finance. 1, 2, 3, 4. Community empowerment.
And self-determination.
2, 3, 4, 5. And self-determination. 6.
Wow, I didn't think that would pull so heavily.
Community investment. 1, 2.
Out of votes.
2. Countering corrupt government power. 1, 2, 2. Sustainability.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We should all vote for that.
We should all.
I think
Changing paradigm.
Some people
1, 2, 3, 4.
I couldn't make up my mind.
I was saving mine for the last.
So here's the, welcome to your, your challenge. All these different things, right? And I told you, you gotta get down to 3, okay? You need to come back together again as a larger group and do exactly what we just did here. This is how you would do this, okay? You brainstorm up all of the general topics, throw them up on the whiteboard, have people vote, and literally get down to 3. Okay, now, the good news here is there's a bunch of different votes, and all of these things got some votes in this room, okay? So it's not like we're not going to talk about them, but what this is the order that we're going to talk about them, and what are the most important things in the here and now. that matter the most, and I would encourage you guys to have a little bit of leadership. You know, as flat line as you guys are with your leadership, somebody's got to kind of be reminding everybody who's voting, what's the here and now? What can you go after right now based on the events that are coming up, what you're participating in, as well as where is the economy at right now, where are the events of the world swirling around us that make the most sense, that we're going to intersect. If we did this straight on vote, this community empowerment, self-determination definitely makes the cut, would make the cut today. Economic justice would have made the cut, and then we had a bunch of 4s. So we either have to do sustainability, campaign finance, or the change in the paradigm shift. So the way I would, if this was the big group and this is what we ended up at, in a large group, I would say community empowerment, which was self-determination as a part of that, which gets more to the philosophical bent of the organization. Economic justice. And then, what's your first event coming up?
F29.
F29, which is?
What the event is?
Shut down alley.
No,
Yeah, American Legislative Exchange Council, which is coordinating all these other corporations such as banks as well.
There's a positive way to frame it, which is.
So are you saying take the 2 top polling and then make the 3rd one your next action?
Whatever the action is. But it sounds like that economic justice is going to be the front and center of that, right?
Yeah.
It's to reclaim our ability to make the decisions that affect our lives, so take back the power from corporations to influence legislation.
Okay. So maybe campaign finance as well?
I mean, and
Right?
everything.
Money and politics.
They're also interrelated.
Yes, they
Yeah.
are.
It's very difficult.
There you go.
I'm writing like these like 1-sentence kind of things, and it's like I can put 3 of these concepts all together because they're so tied in.
Well, it sounds like the compelling argument is coming out, you know? Compelling
So-
argument's coming through at this point.
It's aligning with kind of the philosophical bent of your organization and where you're kind of at in the moment versus the reality of where you're headed. You've also got the Republican primary, right, coming up in mid-May,
Yeah, that's awesome.
right? So you got that as well. Okay, so that's also a campaign finance, money, and politics. So in the moment, I'm not saying this is where you're going to end up once you get together in a larger group, but in the moment, this would be pretty close to what the 3 leading messages would be for us over the course of the next 60 days. It doesn't mean sustainability goes away, right? It doesn't mean that some of these other things that we value and that we stand for go away. It just means that they're not going to be the front and center focus for the next 60 days.
Right. These are things we believe in, really.
Right.
Yeah. So
They align with, and they align with what you're doing,
presently, yeah.
right? Because you can't talk about everything all at once, all the time. Go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like you're setting a timeline, and I thought this was like the messaging forever for the movement, however long it lasts.
Well, the way it works is you want a core message for your group, right? But then it's got to align with what we just talked about.
I don't know.
So all of these things are all the different things that you guys care about, right? That your members, the folks that are joining with you care about. But we got to get down to 3. And we need a compelling 10-second soundbite. So for the next 60 days, once you lock down, for the next 60 days, people say, well, what does Occupy stand for? What does that 99% thing really mean? Well, it means community empowerment, self-determination. It means that we stand for economic justice, and we care about getting the money out of politics.
So how do we change it? I mean, are we setting a deadline? So for the next 60 days we do this, and then the following 60 days we set up a new 3?
Yeah, once we've resonated with our message.
Are you saying 60 days is a hard figure?
I'm just saying that it makes sense from an F29 to a May primary kind of thing.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we actually had a proposal passed that was like cohesive messaging across, like from between Occupy Portland and Occupy Wall Street. And so like every month we would pick a topic and have a cohesive message. So that framework is set up.
What is that framework?
Basically like, coming, like having GA come up with, agree upon a message, either us or Wall Street, and then the other side kind of grabbing all of that onto it and then planning actions.
So the
accordingly.
framework is set up, but the message framework is not set up
The
yet.
first 3 months or something were set up.
But the problem is, even
But then
if
the person who
we
brought
did
the
this,
proposal
yeah,
didn't.
we did this even from the second week in camp, we just had to have theme weeks.
Right. Didn't work.
Bank week.
Bank week.
That, the first one worked, and then the thing is, it's a volunteer-run thing, there's a PR team of people that go in and out all the time, it's just really, really hard
Right.
to get that,
But you've got
to get implemented.
you've got F-29, you've got the May primary. What else you got action-wise?
Well, we're still not sure about the Republican
May Day.
debate in
May Day,
March, yeah.
We have the Oregon Occupy conference coming up still. Yeah, March 15th, which is going to be very
But-
interesting.
Yeah.
So you got
May Day.
May Day
May Day, the G8, and then the May primary.
Yeah,
Or-
G8.
and G8,
No,
which
G8
is
is
in
after.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Isn't that in early May?
No,
May
it's
17th.
no, 19th to the 23rd.
So it's after your May primary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's so many events, I think, as part of it too. Like, we could make a whole new list of the things going on in our neck of the woods.
Oh, and then Hanford.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things then like anti-war marches and all, like every week there's something. So,
Yeah, there's like a march that they're talking about in solidarity with the world on the 26th, and there's just like all these constant barrage of things to participate in.
Earth Day.
It almost makes it a little bit scattered sometimes.
Well, obviously Earth Day would be a sustainability message, right?
Yeah.
Obviously. But what I'm trying to do is help you guys kind of focus in on how you do this, how you get to the theme week, how you kind of take this intersection of what do we stand for, what is our brand, what are all the different things we could possibly talk about. So what are the 3 things we're going to narrow down and focus on over the course of the next 60, 90 days, etc. And part of that is where's the calendar taking us in terms of the events that we're going to be at and the things that would tie together. And so it sounds like, and again, guys, I'm not trying to nail your feet to the floor right now. I'm trying to show you how you go about doing this. But it sounds like if we had a larger group and we had done the same process and everybody had voted and community empowerment and economic justice had come out on top, and then that third theme we're trying to tie into the calendar. So we got F-29, we've got the May Day and the political debate. So it's a chance to really drive this whole money and politics aspect of one of the things we talk about. We'd flip over to sustainability messages around Earth Day, obviously, right? But as an organization, we'd be trying to drive these 3 key points. Is that making sense? Okay. Again, you'll do this slightly different, and you'll have to readjust every 45 to 60 days. Go ahead.
I think the thing that concerns me most about the effectiveness of the Occupy message is the zeitgeist and the culture, which is so divisive at this point and polarized between the answer is through our governmental institutions and forget it. And there's no way you're going to push through any reform. How are you going to overturn Citizens United or what have you? And there is this, I see when the media approaches Occupy, it's like, well, what's your message? How do we stay to a generalized message without factionalizing between the libertarians and the anarchists? Or the social, Democrats or whomever that's going to be a part of the 99% as to how to go about achieving.
I think we have to come together as a group, like whole, at least if we come to every statewide GA and talk about that.
We
Can't
don't know
decide
what we
here.
want, but we don't know how to go about it.
Yeah, we
And
can't
it's going to
decide here.
divide, it's going to constantly be this,
Split.
yeah.
Yeah.
If
No,
you
I
will,
agree.
the powers that be are interested in keeping that polarization going,
Yeah,
as long as we stay
To do this, when you were talking about the couple that got foreclosed on, right? The example we were trying to do with the Skip Humphrey press conference with the old couple, the victims of consumer phone fraud. Those are all compelling anecdotes that amplify what you're talking about. You need people that are amplification of what you're talking about. Not just you guys that you care and that you're passionate about it, but people that have been victims of the other side of this. Those are the people you want to push out front and center. Those are the people that you want to bring to your...
Because that's the message. Yeah.
Exactly. When you're sitting there with Bullhorn and, so here's Mary, meet Mary. She was a victim of social injustice, right? This is when you are bringing those people, because the reporters are doing the same thing, guys. If they're covering these issues, they're out there looking for these people as well. I always tell people, your job, deliver sound bites and anecdotes. Because you want the reporter to rip you off. You want the reporter to take your anecdote and put it into the story, or to take the people that you brought to your action and use them to amplify the message, because they're compelling, they're examples, they're real examples of what's going on. So once we settled on, these are the three themes we're driving for the moment, guys. Yes, sustainability matters, but we're not going to talk about that because it's going to get in the way of our message. So once we've got those themes, now who do we got? Who are the real people that amplify those things, that actually paint the pictures for people? Okay? We've got pretty strong visuals in body count, signs, but what we really need are the real folks. Okay? Because you need to make this real. You need to make this, and this is the strength and the power of what you guys have got going here. Right? You are real people. You're representing the real people out there who are getting screwed, who wake up every morning, play by the rules, and still get screwed. So bring those people front and center. Okay? Whether it's one of you in your own group, if somebody's got a story that they feel is appropriate, step up with it. But it's also how you bring other folks into the movement. If we start seeing senior citizens, who are put together, show up as a part of your movement, and they're talking about the same things that you're talking about, think about how many people you're connecting with now that maybe would have turned off to you before because of what they saw in the media. So bring those people with you. Bring them along, and it's got to be on those topics. Whatever you guys have settled on as a group. Is that making sense? Okay. So that's step 6. So step 7 in this process is, okay, so now what do I want to do? How do I want to start this whole mess, right? When a reporter shows up and says, okay, you bought yourself to 20 minutes, you've got to a place where you know what your core message is, you've got your people, you're ready to rock and roll. The reporter asks the first question. What are you doing with that first question?
Delivering your first soundbite?
Yeah. Yeah, you're driving. I mean, if a reporter shows up and says, hey, do you think there's going to be a lot of people arrested today? What's your goal?
And all those people who are going to be arrested today are being arrested for this reason.
We certainly hope not.
Oh.
But
here's the reason we're here.
But here's the reason we're here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If they ask you, if they just start with a softball, man, it's a rainy day out there, what do you think that's going to do to your numbers? We think this cause is so great, we're going to have great numbers because, and I'm pivoting to my message, right? In other words, folks, this is from the very get-go. Your job with a reporter is the very first thing that comes out of your mouth is a very fast pivot to your core message, okay? You want to establish that as the framework for this discussion because reporters fish off of the dock where they're standing. So you answer the question, and I'm going to probably, well, what do you mean by campaign finance reform? What do you mean by this? When you say social justice, what do you really mean? And now I got you where I want you, right? Doesn't mean that they're not eventually going to say, well, aren't you worried that everybody thinks that you're a bunch of vandals and thugs? What are you going to do with that?
That's a great concern of ours, but I don't know how to pivot from there.
But I appreciate the effort. Somebody else take that one on. If I said to you, aren't you guys, worried about your image of just being vandals and thugs?
I would say we're concerned about that too. We're having a lot of discussions, but really the vandals and thugs are the corporations that are ruining our environment and our economy.
That's an interesting pivot. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
That's very good. Okay, and that's based on getting back to your message, right? If you guys know this is where you're headed every time, right? This becomes the game. And guys, the media is a game, okay? It is not a conversation. It is the pipe and the filter to get to a broader audience. They're not going to see the questions that the reporter asked unless you're live, and most of the time you won't be live unless there's really a shitstorm brewing. Most of the time you will be taped, and they're just going to see your response, okay? If you can keep that to a 10-second compelling soundbite that's on point and on message, you'll have done your job. Because the next step in this process, you'll see there, I've got kind of the 1, 2, 3, right? And we talked about how each one of these things you've got a sub-message for, right? So you lay down your core message and you're ready with your 10-second sound bites behind them, and you've got an anecdote with each one. You've got a real person or a real story with each one. If you guys give me that as an organization after you come together as a group and come to that core message and those 3 sound bites that support that core message and 3 anecdotes, if you hand that to me, I can go speak for you. That's all I need. That's all I need. It's all anyone needs to do this effectively. It's really that simple and that basic. Now, I say simple. Finding anecdotes are hard. Finding those real-life examples of people takes some legwork. But if you have got agreement and alignment as an organization on what you're talking about, then that's when you go to work and find all those examples. That's how we stay consistent. That's how we stay on message. That's how we amplify that message and that voice for the audience, so that people start to get where you're coming from. When they hear Occupy Portland, they're thinking about those visuals and those faces as opposed to the faces where they left off before, right? As opposed to the broken glass and the dirty syringes.
We're giving them new faces.
Giving them new faces. You're giving them a compelling message. The media will play this game with you. They will still look for the controversy. They will still ask you about the controversy. You will still be pivoting away from that, like he just did, like you did earlier, like you've all been doing. Does that make sense?
We're gonna win.
Media's not your friend. They're not your enemy. They just want a story.
They're our tool.
They're a tool. You're their tool. It's a mutual thing. You bond over the soundbite, and you bond over, you're going to give them one of the C's. You've got the conflict happening. That's why they're showing up. If you can keep it towards compelling and away from controversy, you're gonna win, and your numbers are going to grow, and things are going to happen, and you really are going to have enough power to start making change. Okay? Is that making sense? Okay, there's other things in this book. You guys keep them. There's if you're doing presentations or just public speaking, there's some aspects to that in terms of PowerPoint, visualization, other things like that. You guys can take a look at that. There's a list of no-nos, kind of the common things that people screw up on. Here's the bottom line, though. We want you to be who you are. Okay? I don't try and turn people into table pounders if they're not table pounders. You know, I'm kind of a victim of my Germanic heritage here. I'm pretty low-key. I'm pretty laid back. But I have passion about what I'm talking about, and hopefully you picked up on that today. You know, I'm not a rah-rah, jump from the ceiling kind of person, but I can still convey passion, right? And so that, everybody's got that. You wouldn't be in this organization if you didn't have passion. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring that forward and marry that with the message, okay? You got it. Just tap into it. Be who you are. But understand that when you're talking to the media, it isn't a conversation. You are soundbite machines. We can get to a place where we're soundbite machines, and it marries back with the messaging that our organization wants to drive. That's how we're going to win this game. Go ahead.
What do you think about doing a small bit of education to people, like about the conflict, controversy, and compelling thing that you told to us, so they might better understand what they're seeing when the mainstream media puts needles and all the most gross, ridiculous crap they can think of in front of their faces?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it could help. I mean, you know, you can only try. It's like, you know, guys, you've got a ton of people here. You're not going to control them. There's a lot of people who are angry and upset, and they're a part of this organization for various reasons. And I'm not talking about, you know, that you're going to ever get totally away from that. And I think that's what we've been talking about for the last 2 hours here. But it is, how do we still drive a message that is more appealing to the mainstream, so that we get to a place where we've got these strength in numbers and we're not marginalized. We don't just become the group of thugs with needles, but we become, yeah, we are the voice. You know, sometimes it's messy and sometimes it's sloppy, but we're the voice for a large, huge number of people who play by the rules and are getting screwed every day in one way, shape, or form or another. Okay? So, is that helpful? Guys?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
all right.
Thank you.
So
Thank
keep the
you.
material, if I can come back around and help you again, let me know.
Is it acceptable for us to reproduce this
Yeah,
material?
yeah. As a matter of fact, I even wrote, it's on one of those pages there where we encourage you to photocopy it, reproduce it,
Oh, wonderful. Thank
run
you.
around with it.
All right.
Steal this book.
Steal this book,
Mhm.
exactly.
All right.